My hat! Alright, so I'm out here with my Nitro Revo 3.3. Here it is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop it. So I've gone ahead and used masking tape. I'm hoping the masking tape will get marked with the concrete when it bottoms out. So I'm gonna use this ruler, and I think I'm gonna start at about 61 centimeters, 24 inches, and then just drop it. But this will not be from the bottom of the chassis, as it'll be too difficult for me to see. I'm actually gonna use this box here as a reference. So I'll be placing it right about there. Drop it, see if the tape marks. If it doesn't, then a little higher, drop it. I didn't hear anything. Nothing is marked. Let's go 25. Didn't hear anything. Nothing is marked. 26. Alright, I heard something there. Alright. And at 27, it does bottom out. It hits. Now, these things do bottom out easily. I'm not sure if you could, you probably can't tell in the camera, but the tape is marked. But that's one of the things with these trucks. So the springs, as of now, I am running the blue springs in the back, and I'm running the orange springs in the front. I believe both of those were the optional ones. With the stock springs that it was on here, it just didn't work very well. I do have the stock oil. The oil is really what dampens everything, so I do need to replace the oil. But one of the things too is I want to back these collars out just a little, just so the spring doesn't push the truck over. So I am going to be replacing the front springs as well as the rear, and then I'm going to replace the oil. So as of now, I think I'm going to be using maybe a 55 weight in the rear, 45 in the front, but we will see. I'm going to go ahead and work on these, and then I'll bring it back out and see if we can go back to 27 inches and drop it again. Alright, so here we go. I've gone ahead and applied new tape, so I have new tape, and I'm going to drop it again and see if it marks. So I'm going to start at 27 because I think 27 was the mark from last time. So let's go ahead and try. And again, it's 27 from this box right here. I mean, you probably were able to hear it, but it didn't come close to bottoming out. Nothing is marked, so I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go 28, and I'm going to keep going until it bottoms out. Still nothing. Nothing. Uh, 30. I mean, you can hear it. Nothing yet. 31. And again, nothing. Let's try it again. Maybe. No. Well, is that it? Maybe. Barely. So let's try 32. And do that again. Yeah, all right. 32 it hit. But not much. you can see some of the marks here. Yeah, see, those marks are there. All right. So a few little marks, but still, it'll barely hit at 32. So if we compare 27, so 27, which I believe was the last one, to 31, that is quite a difference, especially for bashing or if you're jumping. If we go to 32, 32 bottomed out, but not much was marked. It was mainly in the rear. We are looking at quite a jump. This is over 10 centimeters. Right, we're looking at about 13 centimeter difference from here to there, and 5 inches from one spot to the other. And that's just replacing the oil. Well, obviously replace the springs, but the oil are really there to dampen the vehicle, the springs to bring it back up. Oh, well, you can't really see it now, can you? So again, that's 55 weight in the rear, 45 weight in the front, blue springs in the front, purple springs in the rear. And at some point, I'm gonna run it again and I'm gonna try it out, especially the roll factor, because these things roll easily. There is a sway bar kit for them. I do not want to install it, mainly because you have to drill those arms. And I do not want to drill into those rocker arms because, well, that tends to be a breaking point on these vehicles. They don't break easily, but they do break. Usually that's a suspension failure. That's the point of the suspension that fails when you take high jumps. The arms in the front, those will fail when you hit something. I've already done that. There's nothing to protect them. These right here. So I've already broken those rods. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the front and rear dampers here with springs. So I can go ahead and replace the oil as well as replace the springs. The blue springs in the back will go to the front. These I will remove. And then the purple ones, which are these right over here, 5445, so 5445, will go in the rear. Now, the front is pretty simple because everything's exposed. You will need a 2.5 millimeter in the rear. So you just remove these 2 screws right here and each one will come out. Now, it's all going to depend on whether or not you need the suspension to be in compression or not. If you need it to be in compression, I have it in compression right now, I just have the truck sitting on the suspension. Now, because I'm removing the rear screws first, don't really have to worry about it because the shocks, the shock caps here, they are just up against the shock mount. So it's not a problem. Now, if you removed the front ones first, there you may have a bit of an issue and you may want something to just keep the truck up while you remove, because as soon as you remove these, it's going to want to go forward, which is, it's not a big deal. Here we go. So now I'm going to remove the fronts. Now for the fronts, you will be using a 2 millimeter. So again, 2.5 in the rear, 2 millimeter in the front. And the left and right are the same, just do not mix the front and rear screws. That's really the only thing you have to worry about. And really, to show you, I really just need to remove one of them, because in the front, you remove one, you remove them both, in a sense, meaning if you know how to remove one of them, you know how to remove the second one. So this is it. This has been removed. So I've removed both of those. Now, the rear is a little bit different. You can access the front screws, which are the 2.5 millimeter, without really doing anything. You just place the driver there. But when it comes to the rear screws, that's where it will change, because you actually want your suspension and compression for those, which is one of the reasons why I'm removing the front screws first. Now the front screws are the 2.5 millimeters, and the rear screws are the 2 millimeter head screws. So here we go. Now here it is a little bit more of a challenge because I have to feel where the screws are. I just don't want to stick my head under the camera, but I will try to manage. There we go. That's an angle that I can see. And one of the things that you may want to do is either loosen or remove the tuned pipe. And that's mainly for the right side shock. That's the only reason why. Because the screw's right under it. If you put it in compression, it'll be really close to this nipple here where the hose connects. But you can still manage, especially if you have a driver with a ball end. There we go, we have that. So here I'm just going to put the suspension in compression. That way I can easily put the driver right over the screw. And now I'm just using my hand to hold the damper from expanding, just to make it easier for me to remove the screw. Here it is. So that is one of them. Now for the other one, see, if I put the suspension in compression, I can set the driver in there, right in there, but it would be easier if I loosen the tune pipe and just move it forward a bit. So again, if you want to suffer and do it this way, you can. Now I'm not worried about damaging this hose because it is new, but if you have not replaced your hoses in a bit, this tubing, I'm referring to the tubing. Tubing may be brittle. You may not want to do that because you could damage it with your driver. Now this is loose, I just need to pull it out. But here you go. So again, just remove that screw, push this out. I did not do it. It is possible to do it without doing it, but it will make your life easier. Here we go. So now you just compress it from the rear forward. So the rear forward or forward rear. Here, let me flip this so I can actually see. All right. So here it's taken out of compression. I think it'll be easier. There we go. So go forward, rear, and there's one, and then forward, rear, and here's number 2. All right, so now that I have this, I can actually move the truck off to the side. Just remember, there's no dampers or anything holding it up, so don't drop the truck. Could be easy for some people to forget that. All right, here we go. So I'm just pushing on this. Well, it'd be easier if I just removed all the tension here. There we go. There we go, perfect. All right, and let's do, well, they're the same. So you go ahead and just remove all the tension from here. One of the goals that I have in mind is once I put the blue springs in the front, hopefully I don't need to have preload, and I'll explain later why I'm trying to avoid preload in the front, just the front. But there we go. So we have a front and a rear, and they are identical. There's no difference really between the front and the rear. If you have different oil, just keep track of which ones you're using for the front, which ones you are using for the rear. That's really it. Now, there should have been a tool that came with your shocks that you could place this in and then work on this. I'm not using it. You don't really need it, but just in case. So there it is. And the oil is very clean. I mean, there isn't, I haven't poured that much fuel through this thing. Half a gallon, no, more than half a gallon. About 3 liters, just under 3 liters. So this thing's still pretty new, I would say. I'm just gonna set it there. Then I'm gonna do the same thing to this one. Well, one of the things to note is that now these GTR shocks are pretty good, but they are small compared to many other vehicles out there. But they work. I mean, they're good enough. That's something to keep in mind. But given the size of the vehicle, I would have certainly preferred a bigger bore. But this is what Traxxas gives you, and like I said, they're good enough, but bigger bore would have been nice. So we'll go ahead and open up these springs. Right, so these are the purple. So purple springs. Here, I'm just compressing them because they're brand new. Just a few times is fine. The purple do have a higher spring rate compared to the blue, and the blue have a higher spring rate compared to this orange. So these are going to go in the front. I'm only going to build one on camera, front and rear, and then I'm going to show you the difference so I can compare it with the stock one. Although these are pretty stiff here, you're not going to be able to tell until I test drop the truck. I decided to go with 55 in the rear, 45 in the front. I want lighter in the front because it's going to be an off-road vehicle, so I do want that front suspension to react faster. And as I mentioned, the factory oil is about a 30 or 35, I cannot remember. I want to say it's 35, so it's quite light. So here we go, one rear with the 55. And I'm just going to push the piston up and then just drive it down. Now, these particular shocks here, these are similar to the GTRs that you would put on a Slash 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive in the front. That's pretty good. All right, we have that. So now I need the shock cap. Should have prepared a towel, but I did not. Give me a moment. There was just something on that little diaphragm, the rubber piece that goes in the shock cap. So here we go, perfect. And this is something that I mention often when I'm working with shocks. I generally go left first, and then once I hear a click, then I'll go right. And I do that on purpose. That feels good. All right, I'll leave it. All right, so this is a rear. I'm just wiping it off here, off to the side. And we're gonna go ahead and install a purple spring. This is your stop, so make sure that you bring the stop up. I mean, here it looks down, but it's up in relationship to how this would be oriented. And then I wanna go ahead and put the spring mount on. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take all the slack off, all this extra space. I'm actually just sticking my thumb between the coils. All right. Now, there is a wrench that's included with the kit. That's good enough. And that wrench, you would place it here, and that way you can turn without unscrewing the cap. So be careful when you're doing this. If you cannot get a good enough grip, or let's just say after having a lot of dirt in here, this is difficult to move up or down. if you twist on this, because in order to bring it down, you're backing it out, you will sometimes accidentally loosen the top cap. So keep that in mind. But that is it. Oh, this is a lot stiffer. If I were not replacing the oil from these, I would have just put these in the front, but I do want heavier oil in here for dampening. That's the reason why I didn't just put the rears in the front, and then the fronts and the rear only replacing the springs and the oil and the front shocks, since they are the same. But that's the reason why, just in case you were wondering why I was doing that. Alright, this is the 45 weight. And when you push the piston up, just be careful. And the reason why is if you have a large bubble of air and you bring it up too fast, that bubble of air will just rush up to the top really fast and then just burst, and it will spill oil all over the place. You may actually get some on your face. So just be careful. It's clean oil, so I would not worry about any harm, but I really do not like the way silicone oil feels. This is probably one of the reasons why I dislike shocks. I mean, I don't dislike them with a passion, I just don't like the feeling of shock oil. Alright, now I'm just trying to clean off the excess, mainly because I don't want dirt sticking to the oil and then to the threads, and making it difficult for me to adjust the compression on the spring, or the preload I should say. But there it is. Alright, it's a little too much pack. Alright, that feels just like the other one felt. And we'll move this all the way to the top for now. Go ahead and install the blue spring, bring that stopper down, and now the spring mount, the lower spring mount. And I'm going to move that there, and here we go. And I'm just going to get rid of the play here, that slack. There we go. Once the spring no longer jumps back and forth, I'm going to leave it like this. The final adjustments will have to be on the vehicle. That's the reason why. Alright. And there is quite a difference. I can do this without... Yeah, this is a big difference. Okay, hopefully that helps. And the other thing too is the spring is a little shorter. And this is important because these springs were in the front, and one of the problems are, and I'll show you once they're on the truck, is because the springs are softer, I need to have more compression. So I need to compress them a little more, so add a little more preload. But then what that ends up doing is it wants to push the arm more. So as soon as weight starts coming off the front, off one side, so you're taking a turn, it'll start to decompress the suspension and push the inner wheel further, and it makes your truck flip over a lot easier because of that, and I will show you later on. But here we go. So we have the front blue, which we have right here, and then we have the rear purple, which is what we are going to be using. Now at this point, didn't really take that long, but I want to go ahead and just reinstall those. So I'm going to go ahead and place this here. I'm not going to be using those. let me place those there. Let's see, purple spring will go here, and then the blue spring will go on that one later on. So let me bring the truck back on camera, and then I'll do the other two off camera. Or maybe I'll just do it now and show you. We'll see, we'll see. All right, so we have the truck back on the table. And the fronts are pretty simple. Now, one of the things that you want to do is you want to, well, these are the same, so it doesn't matter if it goes this way or that way. That's the first thing. And I'm going to go ahead and place the rear part of the shock first. And I just sat it there. So here we go. Now, once it's sat, you can go ahead and tighten this. And I'm going to go ahead and just do the rear part first. And that's it. Snug is good, do not over tighten. And now it's easier to decompress the suspension than to compress the damper, especially with the new spring, which is why I'm holding the truck up. And that is it. All right, for the rear, I'm going to be doing the right side first. So I'm just going to be placing this in here, and I'm just placing this in sideways. And for this one, I'm going to do the front side first. And that's where your long screws go, the 2.5 heads. And again, you're going to drive these until they are snug. Do not over tighten. You do not want to damage any plastic parts, well, any parts at all, especially from your suspension. And we're almost there. There we go. Now, this is where you will run into trouble. And it's because, probably should have done the other side first, but anyway, not a big deal. All right, decompressed. And let me go ahead and remove the tune pipe, just loosen it, as I mentioned before. Now there's two ways to do it. I find it easier to do it here. Another way would be to remove, there's a little set screw in there. You can do that, but as long as you can move the tuned pipe, out of the way, you could remove the whole thing entirely. I just don't want to. There we go. So that has been placed. And I'm just trying to hold the truck at that height so that I can just place the screw in there. And now I just need my 2mm. And that's really the key part, is holding the truck up or down so that this arm compresses or decompresses enough for you to just easily drop the screw in. But here we go. So we have one front, one rear installed. Before I go into the other ones, I think there's plenty of time for me to just go ahead and do the others. No, I'll still do them off camera. So what ends up happening is the following. Whenever you have too long of a spring, what will happen is the spring will always want to decompress, right? That's its job. So when you take a turn, so you go this way, what will happen is the spring will push on this all the way, and then it'll lift. So as the force is going this way, right, you have this vector going here, all the weight's going to this tire. This will lift, and this tire will lift too much too fast, or too fast. I mean, it'll lift, let's just say it'll decompress the same amount, but it'll be too fast, so it'll add a push, so that this spring would actually end up pushing this over. And the same thing happens with the rear. The rear, this would end up pushing this over, and then your truck just flips over. That's the reason why I'm going with these shorter springs. They have a higher spring rate, but they are shorter, so I don't have to have that much preload compared to the other ones. That's the reason why. And I accidentally bumped the camera, but that is it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do the other ones off camera